Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Turn Bark Time. Or should I say, top of the morning to ya, because this is being dropped on St. Paddys Day. All right, if you didn't know that's my bad Irish accent, the 42% of my relatives would be super upset with you. But I'm still the turn.
I'm still the bark. I'm only 3%.
Oh, good. You got less people who will be mad at you. Uh, and we're gonna be here a long time. Barker had a great idea. Who couldn't love the fact that tomorrow? Oh, you know what? I'm jumping ahead. I love this so much. But hey, let's go season 3, episode 8. Oh, I like it. Episode 8. Okay. We're gonna talk about the favorite holiday, the thing that invokes green. Barker's even wearing Quincy gear. So Ari Long kids, this is where he came from, and by golly, he's proud. But he still represents you guys as true Jacks as well. Um, we're talking St. Patrick's Day, one of my favorite just holidays, just because it's just goofy. You get to wear green, right? And you know what? Let's be real. Americans, this is just another reason that we pour how do I say it delicately, an adult beverage of fermented hops and barley and water. And that, Barker, is St. Patrick's Day. So let's give a little history. Let's give a rundown.
Right. So St. Patrick's Day falls into the category. I kind of think in America that we have this growing cadre of holidays for groups that used to be ostracized, but then we recognize they're not official holidays. They're not like government holidays. We still go to work. The banks are still open, but it's a great, I guess it's a great way to show that minority or ethnicity has been like absorbed into, they used to say the American melting pot, but now there's kind of this idea that it should be a salad,
Mm-hmm.
because a melting pot implies that everybody's assimilating to the same thing. And I guess prior to like 1980, that was probably pretty true. But now the idea is that, e pluribus unum, there can be many people that make up the one country. So some people are lettuce, some people are olives, some people are Caesar salad dressing. I don't know. Um, I'm a little fruity, so I don't know. Maybe I'm a raisin. But
Quiz.
right, we're all different pieces that make it up. And so St. Patrick's Day, um, people don't think about this because when we think about, I guess, racial tensions and things like that and discrimination, most people tend to focus on, people that we wouldn't quantify as being white today. But they don't realize that when the Irish first came over, that the Irish were not accepted as being, or thought of as being, the same as Anglo-Saxons.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things, like that's where we get those terms. Like you'll notice that St. Patrick's Day is actually called, what do we call it?
St. Paddy's Day.
St. Patty's Day. And Patty was actually a moniker. It was supposed to be a negative stereotype to the Irish, right? And one of the thoughts is that the Irish would get in a lot of trouble, whether it be from drinking, fighting, whatever, right? To the point where they actually started calling police cars or police wagons, they started calling them paddy wagons, right? And it was the idea that this is a place where the Irish go, they get hauled off to jail and everything like that. And so the reason, again, we can talk about Irish coming over to the United States in that sense really quick, is most determined by the potato famine that occurred where Ireland, the potatoes, remind me correctly, Parker, potatoes are native to North America, correct? Indigenous to North America?
Yes, they don't belong in Ireland.
Yes, but after they were brought over from the discovery of the New World, we had our Columbian Exchange, and potatoes were one of the things that came back to Europe. And the Irish started planting potatoes, and it became a staple of their diet because they were really easy to grow. They were really cheap. They last a long time. But then we had a famine. And for those of you who don't know, famine is where a food source dries up. In this case, there was a disease that was going through the potato crop that actually made them small and shriveled and black, if I remember correctly. And so basically people in Ireland were like, crap, we have no more food. What do we do? Let's go to America.
Yeah, they grew potatoes because the British came over, found potatoes, and they said, with an acre of potatoes, you can feed more Irishmen than you can feed them with an acre of wheat. It produces more calories per acre. So it's actually from a very bare bones perspective, more beneficial, which you could also argue why the Brits like to have fish and chips. So it's not only for the Irish, but also for the Brits that potatoes come in, and it kind of competes with wheat to take that, I guess, kind of like starch. Is
Yep.
that where, yeah, starch category, or kind of like the filler in
Yep.
your food. So it's a more efficient filler than wheat.
Yeah.
Wheat.
So let's talk about what this holiday is named for. So there's a guy by the name of Saint. About you've been canonized and then reached sainthood in the Roman Catholic Church. There are a bunch of saints out there, but Saint Patrick is probably the most recognizable. I would make an argument for in terms of a non-worshiping person knowing a saint. I would say Saint Patrick would be one of those. So, are you going to argue it? Who do you think?
No, I just, because I'm a nerd, I know that each of the flags for like England, Scotland, and North Ireland are all the flags of the patron saints. And so
Yep.
like England is St. George, which is why the Georgian flag, the country of Georgia, not Yeehaw, Georgia,
Yeah.
looks similar to the English flag because their patron saint of England is St. George. And then St. Andrew's flag is the white X on the blue field. And then St. Patrick would be a red X on a white field, which gives you the flag, the British flag.
Yep.
And the
All
Welsh
put together.
shafted.
Yeah. Well, you can't really slap a dragon in the middle of that, although you should because it would be dope. So basically, Patrick was 5th century Romano-British Christian missionary and bishop in Ireland. He is believed to be the lone Roman Briton, which is crazy when you think about it. Yes, the Roman Empire made it all the way up to the British Isles. If you didn't know that, Parker.
Yeah. And so I mean, I guess the first surprising thing is that St. Patrick isn't Irish.
Nope.
Right. That it's some people argue about where exactly he came from from the island of Britain. But most people tend to agree that he actually would have been what today I think would have been in Wales. So he's actually a Welshman.
Yep.
But I got that from a British site from the BBC because they care a little bit more about where things are on that island than Americans do. They're like, it's over there above France, so it's probably British.
Yep.
What is English? England runs everything. But that was my American accent. American.
Yep.
But yeah, he at the age of 16, he's not super religious in the early years, so we know, or according to the records that we have that they postulate were probably written by him.
Yeah.
Says he was a little bit of a heathen. He was a 16-year-old. He gets captured by Irish raiders and gets taken in slavery and bondage to Ireland, where he works as the nice sources say he was a shepherd and worked in the fields with the sheep. But by all other accounts, like some other accounts, like he was essentially like kept close to like naked and like forced to live in the wilderness, like not a very cushy job.
No.
And then he has he meets Jesus, right? He kind of becomes religious,
he finds God is kind of the definition. I compare it to an experience similar to that of like Muhammad, right? In Islam, right? He has a revelation where he kind of meets God and God tells him what to do.
Yeah. So essentially he gets order, like his epiphany or whatnot says, go to the coast, jump a boat, and like go back home. So he goes home, and then he goes to Gaul, which if you don't have the Gaul to know what Gaul is, it's France, where he studies under a Germanic bishop, and anyway, becomes a priest, right? Becomes a man of the cloth, and then he returns to Ireland, and this is kind of where, from a historical perspective, he converts pagans to Christianity, to Catholicism, to be more specific.
Yeah. And this is where you get that allegory, I think is the word I saw, where when you mention St. Patrick, if you mention it to somebody who knows a little bit more of the story, the story is he drove the snakes out of Ireland. Snakes being a representation of people who don't like accept religion into their lives, right? So he took the again, this is a very Christian style where he goes to an area that's pagan, so polytheistic religion, right? Multiple gods and everything like that, and tries to convert them to monotheism, one God. And anyone who doesn't accept that is like tried to be driven out of the area.
There's some other like Irish lore that talks about like the reason like why they like the color green is that like there was this mythical guy and he got bit by a snake and Moses like hits him with his staff and like heals him and it turns green, and so he goes up on like this tower and sees a really green island with no snakes. But I mean, it's a kind of like one of those like, was that there first or was it kind of retconned to fit with the no snakes theme? So I mean, it's folklore, history and folklore kind of woven together. So you take it with a grain of salt. The other thing that they credit him with is the creation of the Celtic cross. So if you're not familiar with the Celtic cross, it's you know what a cross is, and then the Celtic cross kind of has a circle, right, kind of superimposed kind of in the middle, like a ring. And what they were saying is that in a way, it's more syncretic than it is like conversion. So like syncretic means that you take like pieces of one religion and pieces of other religions and put them together, and what do you get? Something new, bibbity boppity religion.
Is that an amalgamation?
Yeah, amalgamation. Hashtag Sarah Martinez, Dr. Sarah Martinez.
Hashtag those shirts on our shirts.
That's right. But they were saying that ring represents the sun, because he would use bonfires like around Easter. The pagans were used to having a bonfire, so they would have a bonfire, and then he would just change their like kind of like convince them that they should have a different reason for having the bonfire. So, and you see this a lot, like the Spanish, when the Spaniards take over, the Mexica and the Inca, like there's certain aspects of their religion that they, I guess, convince them that the reason for the season is different. And if you look at why do we celebrate Christmas during winter solstice
with trees,
but we've already covered that. Yeah. And so like I look at it and it's one of those things, and St. Patrick also taught about the Holy Trinity, like the idea of three parts being one of the same, like there are three separate things that are part of the same thing, or you know what I mean, when you talk about the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, which is kind of ironic because naturally most clovers are three-leafed, but we associate today on St. Patrick's Day, because it's more commercialized and it's less religious, about the four-leaf clover, which actually has nothing to do with St. Patrick.
Zero.
But it goes back to that idea of like luck in the Irish, and which again kind of goes back to like was a negative perception that they didn't work, they were lazy, and they just expected to be lucky rather than to be hardworking. So it's interesting, kind of like the meaning that it has today versus like kind of how perception started. But I really think what it is that over time, the Irish eventually, kind of become part of the accepted American melting pot, so to speak. And the hardest part about it is that they're Catholic, and the United States is predominantly Protestant, which if you didn't know, not all Christians are Catholics, and but Catholics are Christians, but not all Christians are Catholics. Yeah, that gets confusing. And like, talking about, we've only had two Catholic presidents in the history of the United States. It's Biden and Kennedy.
Right. And the people were terrified when Kennedy got elected. They thought he would listen to the Pope more than he'd listen to the American people. It didn't happen. Yeah. But yeah, so let's fast forward to kind of today and think about St. Patrick's Day. So obviously we're both wearing green, right? We have this tradition of like pinching people who don't wear green tomorrow, or today, I guess you should say today. This is dropping on the top of the morning. That's my only Irish phrase I have at the moment. But like I even watched it, Chicago, one of the most famous things in Chicago is they actually take they take boats, and if I can remember which river, because I don't want to screw up, and I don't want to make our Chicago fans angry. It is the Chicago River. Good. I just want to make sure I had that right. But they actually take boats and they start dumping green dye into the river for St. Patrick's Day, and it turns that river runs green.
Looks like something out of a Batman movie.
Yes, it really does. It looks terrifying. And it's actually, so a note here is it actually has been celebrated in the United States since I think 1601 was the first technical celebration of it in the United States. And there is a parade in New York City that is actually the largest St. Patrick's Day parade in the world. Which is ironic when you think of that St. Patrick's Day is all about Ireland. So,
and it's interesting because Chicago's home to the second largest parade in the U.S.
Anybody know the number one? Anybody? Pause the video. Guess. No? Okay, Barker.
You said it. Well, you just said it was New York.
No, I said they have the largest parade in the world.
That's what I said. Parade.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking about the largest Irish population outside of Ireland.
No. And what the point I was making that both New York City and Chicago are not even in the top 10 of cities with Irish populations in the United States.
Hilarious.
So, which if people could guess, they should guess. I'm assuming that you're going to have the answer that I have for number one.
Yes. Would you like to give it?
The answer that I would give is Boston.
Boston. Yep.
Boston.
So
I've always wondered why the Celtics are the Celtics and not the Celtics, but
no, it's a great question. Maybe for another day. Or one of our viewers, feel free to comment below. Why are they the Celtics and not the Celtics?
If you know something that we don't,
you would be a lot of people.
Yeah. We probably have more money than we do too. But
yep.
The other thing to think about with this is that green's a national color for the Irish, and it dates back to, the Great Irish Rebellion of like 1641, I think. There was a militia commander who put an Irish harp on a green field, which is pretty consistent when you think about like units in the American Civil War, where a lot of those potato famine fleeing people came over, and depending on where you got off the boat, you joined the Union or you joined the Confederate Army.
Yeah.
Because you needed a job and somebody said, hey, we'll pay you money, and then here's a gun.
Yep.
If you think about the lyrics to Paddy's Lamentation, put a gun into your hand and you're off to fight for Lincoln. Yep. So it's just one of those things that like a lot of people complain about it because consumerism has really kind of taken the day. So like leprechauns have no association.
Zero. That's the best
to the actual story of St. Patrick's Day. And leprechauns in the beginning were kind of a negative stereotype that like the English would portray the Irish with. And anyway, if you want to learn about leprechauns, this is a unsolicited plug for Monstrum. It's a PBS related YouTube channel. They have an episode on leprechauns with what's her name, Dr. Emily Zarkin. She does an amazing job. If you want to learn about like Oogie Boogie Men from different cultures, so Monstrum on the YouTube.
Hashtag Monstrum.
Unsolicited.
We don't get paid by anybody, and that's the best part of our job. So we can say whatever we want.
Barely get paid by the districts.
Easy. McCreary decision came down. We're doing okay. But one of the things, I mean, again, I lump in, like Barker said at the beginning of this, I lump St. Patrick's Day into the classic American holidays, right? We have St. Patrick's Day. We have Cinco de Mayo, which again, have we done a Cinco de Mayo episode?
I don't think we have.
We might have to do a Cinco de Mayo episode to let everybody know what actually happened on Cinco de Mayo. What else am I thinking of?
Those are the two big ones.
Those two big ones, right? Everyone always says them, right? And then,
but I feel like Dia de los Muertos is getting more clout.
Yeah, I would agree.
You know what I mean? So Day of the Dead's becoming more prominent.
Coco especially.
Chinese New Year.
Yes.
Get up there.
Everyone. Yep.
So I mean that would be another one.
I guess I don't associate those to equal because like when I think of St. Patrick's Day and I think of Cinco de Mayo, I associate them through my college experiences, but even my adult experiences, or even when I was younger, they were tied to alcohol. Whereas Dia de los Muertos, Chinese New Year, right? The holidays are getting to become more recognizable, but they're not associated with alcohol or consumption of alcohol. Indulgence.
Consumerism.
Yeah. I'll say indulgence of alcohol, right? Because that's a big thing. So, I mean, look at and consumerism, going back to what you said, right? Like McDonald's releases it at the end of February. It's called the Shamrock Shake, right? It runs all the way through June, and they just continue it, and everyone gets upset. Like they just run out of mint packets to put in their ice cream. So
it's the pumpkin spice of the spring.
Correct. That's an easy way to describe it.
Or pumpkin spice is the Shamrock Shake of fall.
Yes, I like that better.
Because I think that came first.
It did.
I had a kid correct me because I was like, well, clocks are just giant watches. And he goes, no, watches are small clocks because clocks came first. And I was like, fair enough. Another thing I looked at today, corned beef and cabbage.
Oh, yes.
Is actually an American creation.
Yep.
So they in Ireland, they would have ham and cabbage.
Yeah.
But because of their impoverished status in the United States, what was happening is that the Irish women would go, and ships that were coming back from being at sea for a long time would have salted beef left over, and they would go buy. Think about how gross that kind of. You talk about quality of food. Salted beef that has been in a barrel salted for a
months
voyage, and then you would rinse it like 3 times. And this is where you kind of get the idea of like corned beef is something that's like kind of like it takes a while to make. You can't just like, I'm gonna make corned beef in 5 minutes.
Yeah,
it's a process.
Hours.
Yeah. Chris Molitor's husband made some bomb Reuben sandwiches for St. Patrick's Day.
That's dope.
So, or so I hear from my wife, who the district office got them,
and we did not.
So
that's okay. Yeah, so it's crazy. It's been it's a really interesting experience because again, at my house, it's the same thing. It's corned beef and cabbage, and I do not care for corned beef and cabbage. I don't even care for the smell of corned beef and cabbage, but I had to come home and smell it when it was being cooked. Right, my mom's family's Irish, but ironically, it was my dad who loved corned beef and cabbage, and he's English to a T, as in Turner. So, which again, my Irishness is hidden. If you look really close to me, you can see red in my beard, or gray. Who knows what it's turning into now? But kind of a fun thing to talk about, and it was a really good experience. St. Patrick's Day was always fun in college, right? Like, because it was just a day to go out and hang out with your friends, right? You get together, even if you weren't like necessarily consuming alcohol or indulging in it, right? Like it was somebody you were going to get together in the middle of the week. And that was kind of a fun thing. It was the same thing with Cinco de Mayo, right? You were going to get together during the week and get to hang out with people and spend time with each other and everything like that. Even if you're not spending it for the reasons it was originally created or originally celebrated, right? It's still a chance for us to kind of like get together. And with COVID-19, I'm not going to say ending, but COVID-19 restrictions being lifted, this is a super exciting time, right? To have a holiday like this in our midst. So, I'm excited for tomorrow. I think it's going to be fun. I was really glad you brought this episode up. So,
yeah. The other thing I was thinking of is that Notre Dame, the university in Indiana,
correct.
The Fighting Irish it was established in 1842, I think, but didn't take on the Fighting Irish moniker until 1927.
Interesting.
So they were originally competed under the nickname of like the Catholics, or like the Ramblers or the Rovers. And then it was, I think, started under like Newt Rockney, I think. He started to refer to them like this idea of, because it's a Catholic school, which I kind of poke fun with kids and go, why do you have a college in Indiana with a French name and an Irish mascot? And the common thread, the reason for all of it is it's all Catholic.
Yep.
Like the founder was French, and then like a bunch of the other founders, like the first guy who named it was French, which is why it's named after a cathedral in France.
Yep.
And then a lot of the people who went there were Irish because the predominant Catholic population of America were Irish Catholics. And so by 1927, they're like, you know what, this is better than everything else that anybody's called us. And at that point, being the Fighting Irish meant essentially being like stubborn and determined, and you weren't going to be like put down, which kind of goes back to the immigrant experience and facing nativism.
Yep.
and having to fight against that. Gangs of New York movie recommendation right there.
Fantastic. No solicitation, but Daniel Day-Lewis and Bill the Butcher.
So, and if you're old enough for rated R movies, I also highly recommend on St. Patrick's Day, Boondock Saints.
Not gonna say it.
And if you're not old enough for R-rated movies, I recommend The Luck of the Irish or Darby O'Gill and The Little People.
Like Luck of the Irish was a DCOM that dropped, and I loved that movie. And to tie with March Madness right now would be fantastic. Speaking of which, we have like 30 seconds left. Barker, give me your final four.
I think I said Gonzaga because I'm a homer. I said that Gonzaga, Zona, did I say Villanova? Because their name sounds funny. Got to root for Villanova. And then who's the one? So you have Gonzaga that's up here. Is it Kansas?
Kansas is in the Nova bracket. You got Baylor, the Baylor bracket. So the not South, the East.
I don't feel like it was Baylor, but
so you had Baylor or Kentucky out of that one was the two.
Kentucky.
Purdue, okay. Purdue is the three. Okay. I got Gonzaga coming out of the West. I got Tennessee coming out of the South. Let's go ahead and bring Kansas out of the Midwest. And you know what? We're going to give it to the Boilermakers of Purdue. And we're going to say Gonzaga beats Purdue. And we'll say Tennessee beats Kansas. Gonzaga wins, beating Tennessee.
Well, we got to show love over here to Tommy Lloyd, who's a Kelso native, who's the skipper of the Arizona team, I think. So,
yep. So what do you got? Who do you got though? You got so you have Villanova. Nova versus Zona. Who wins?
I think I said Arizona.
Okay, and then Gonzaga versus Kentucky.
I said Zaga, and then I think I gave it to Arizona because I think Gonzaga is going to choke. Jimmy Kimmel the other night was saying that he still doesn't believe that Gonzaga is a real place.
My favorite is the one where he sends Guillermo to their locker room and he's like, blink twice if you're under duress. And the guy's like, what? So anyway, March Madness, craziness, right? Fun. St. Paddys Day tomorrow. Have a safe trip. Have a safe time. If you're indulging, whatever, live your life. If you're a child who watches this, drink yourself some green water or green Gatorade or Mountain Dew, whatever you can that's green. Okay, and have a fantastic time. We have one more announcement. We are going to record next week. John Anderson from SW1, that's Southwest 1, that was my trip this summer, has requested that we talk about the Japanese invasion of the United States during World War II. If you don't know, hashtag you gotta wait till next week. Until next time, I'm the Turn.
I'm the Bark.
And we're going to be here a long time. Have a good night, everybody.
Be safe.
And be well.